Welcome to the God's Eye Production Podcast. Just a quick note, this is episode 10, and this one is on colors, and I'll go into more detail what that means in just a minute. This week we're going to be talking about colors. Now this isn't an art podcast about art appreciation or Bob Ross, who's come into prominence because of the generation underneath me, because I'm considered to be a millennial. These colors are operational definitions for interacting with people. So I've discussed previously on the podcast that I am on the spectrum, and I always had difficulty interacting with people growing up, and I never had a very good framework on how to communicate with people because, when you're communicating with people, you want to share what you're interested in, whether that be Batman or Lord of the Rings or, Pokemon, or pick your thing that you like. People who are neurodivergent, people with autism, ADHD, etc., they tend to focus so much on one thing that if you're not interested in that, then it can become very draining to people. And, we're left to kind of figure out how to read people and how to interact with people. And when I was younger, there wasn't a lot of resources that there are now for people. Things were just starting to get going. So in terms of some of this stuff, I kind of feel a little behind, but God puts me in these situations where I have to learn how to interact with people to get something done or to just have daily life with. And it's annoying and it's frustrating, just to be honest, because people are not consistent. And no matter how consistent you are with them, sometimes they're not consistent. And sometimes it becomes, are you mad at me? Or, have I done something to make you upset? And, I don't get to know the deeper things of, oh, well, you're not really upset at me. You're upset because your dog got ran over this morning. And if that be the case for you, you've lost a pet. I am so sorry. Be with those people, Lord. It kind of makes it hard to interact with people. So throughout the last probably decade or so, I've been trying to better my social skills. And one of the things that I come across in the last year is a book, and it's going to sound a little offensive at first, but that's just a disclaimer. It's called Surrounded by Idiots. That's just the catchy title. The book itself isn't really about calling people names. It's about how to use colors to help you have social operational differences between people. Like, this person presents as this color according to that book. This person presents as this color according to that book. Now, as Christians, we have to be careful, especially because it's like I was discussing with one of my mentors this past week. We have different types of branches of Christianity. I'm not talking about Eastern Orthodoxy, Western Orthodoxy, Lutheranism, Calvinism, Reformed Baptist. I'm not talking about all that. There are plenty of podcasts out there for you to discover more of the church history and that kind of thing. Here our focus is discipleship and sort of bringing things along that people may not consider, like, for instance, the colors that I'm about to talk to you about. There's different branches. So once you get saved, so Romans 10:9, confess with your mouth, believe in your heart, and you will be saved. And for anybody who is just joining us on our journey, I've not done it for a couple weeks, but just want to put that plug back out there. Our focus here is discipleship, but to get on the discipleship boat, salvation is kind of a big part of that too. We're more concerned here about after you get saved, after you get up off that altar, how are we going to walk out our life with God? And the cross is a big part of that. Salvation is a big part of that, because we all are born with an inherent sin nature, and we have to come to the knowledge of what sin is. Sin is just missing the mark. There is a lot of guilt with that word. There's a lot of shame. Some of you listening to this, you might be starting to feel the pricks of shame and guilt there. And sin in the Hebrew just means missing the mark. So sometimes we miss the mark a lot. Sort of like you have a target, you're an archer, and you're shooting an arrow, and maybe the arrow flies completely off the hay bale if you have it attached to a hay bale. That would be really missing the mark. And then sometimes you'll hit your target, but it's not the bullseye where you want to be. Because discipleship is all about maintaining. Now, granted, we get off the rails too. I'm going to confess, I get off the rails quite a bit. A couple weeks I talked about praise, and I was starting to feel empty at the beginning of this week, and God reminded me, hey, you forgot to praise me this week. Oh, yep, I've been reading my Bible. I've been praying to you. I've been doing things with you, consecrating my stuff to you. That just means to make it especially God's. But I've not been praising your name. I've not been going to the top of the mountain. I've not been singing. I've not been listening to music that affirms who God is. And that was a simple fix. I mean, it was a complicated way to get to it, but it was a simple fix. And it all started with a flat tire. It says in the Word that we are overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and by our testimony. So, talked about the blood of the Lamb. Let's talk about testimony for just a second. So, flat tires, having trouble for the last 2 days. God reorientates me, says, is this an obstacle or is this an opportunity? So I used it as an opportunity to praise God's name. So even though the tires are slack, I keep having flat tires at that time, putting the Fix-A-Flat in them, going through the whole process. I'm getting upset. I'm getting emotional. And part of me doesn't even want to do it. So it's spiritual warfare too. So, that's a part of it too. Sometimes spiritual warfare just operates right under your radar and then of awareness. And you're like, I don't want to deal with that. I'll just go today and do something else, and I can just leave that car there on the hill. No, we're going to do this right now. And then suddenly the enemy gears up that spiritual warfare. So I was like, all right, fine. I'm going to praise the name of the Lord. So that's what I did. Sometimes we can all miss the mark. So getting back to the point, there is the churches that are more focused on salvation, more churches that are focused on discipleship, and then there's kind of a in-between kind of place. And it's like in everything with human nature, it's on a spectrum. And you can look up videos about theological spectrums on YouTube. Are we shifting to a more open version of Christianity, which would be considered like progressive Christianity, or we're going to shift more to a conservative Christianity? Everybody's on a slider. People try to say, oh, I'm this and I'm that. Chances are most people are on a slider. I pray that when I do this podcast, I try to present things in a balanced way that's neither one way or completely the other way, because I feel like because of the world we live in that's very polarized at the moment, we need more balance. And even the Bible speaks of balance. We need to be more like that. We need to be more of the balance and less of the other, the polarization, because we need to remember that when we're out there witnessing to people, let's focus on what we can agree on. Let's not focus on what we can't agree on, because regardless of your personal opinion on media and things like that, you need to be careful what you allow into your eye gates and what you allow into your ear gates and what you allow to come out of your mouth gate, because each of these things are gates, and that can either win more people or turn people off. So sometimes you are the only God that people will see. So that was a long-winded way to get around to talking about Surrounded by Idiots once again. Surrounded by Idiots, and it's based off of personality types. Now, a lot of people go with horoscopes and things like that. Some people say if you're a Christian, don't do that because it's pagan, this, that, and the other thing. I'm not talking about horoscopes today. What I'm talking about is based on a personality test, and the person who wrote this book, his name is Thomas Erickson. He put them into colors. That way it's easier to use that as a definition when you're out talking to people. I do this when I am talking to people as part of my job, and depending on what color they present as, that kind of tells me what I need to do or how I need to react around this person in order to kind of give them the program, because I'm an educational ranger at a state park here in Virginia, and I need to be able to reach my audience. So I need to be able to know who is around me, who I'm giving the program to, and things along those lines. So this book's really helped me in my own journey in what I do, but I think it would also be really great for a ministry, whether it be an online ministry, discipleship, regular church, going out and talking to people in the street by witnessing to them. I think that if more people would consider these things, your interaction with people might be more effective. Because I know it's a burden for lost souls. I know. It's trying to win as many people as we can. I know. But the problem becomes, it's like the Titanic. We're the Titanic. The Titanic is the world, and it's sinking. So the Titanic world is sinking really slowly, and all these people are floating in the water, and we got to, get as many people saved as possible. And it's very important to get people saved, but we also have to meet them where they are, because unless we meet them where they are, we can't get them saved. We can't disciple them. We can't really do a lot of anything. And God will move, but it's also good to have a little bit of understanding of how people work as well. Because in this day and age, unfortunately, because everybody has a chip on their shoulder because of the way the world is, because the world is a hard place to live in. It always has been, but because of just the spiritual forces moving about in our world, and everybody has to be right all the time, are we trying to win souls, or are we trying to win arguments? So that's kind of where I'm going with this. So the colors are red, yellow, green, and blue. So these are primary colors. So these are the primary ways that people behave. The book does say that these present more for adults than they do for children. I have seen some of these behaviors in children, and I'm not talking about, you've made a mistake, go sit in the corner and time out. That's not what I'm talking about. Now, some of these behaviors start presenting, I think, in children, but it's not a hard and fast rule for children. This is more geared for adults, and the book itself says that. So, what is a red person like? A red person is aggressive, ambitious, strong-willed, goal-oriented, pushing, problem solver. They're a pioneer. They can be very decisive, innovator, impatient, controlling, convincing, performance-oriented, powerful, result-oriented, initiator, speed, timekeeper, intense, opinionated, straightforward, and independent. You can probably be thinking about somebody in your life that fits some of these criteria for what is considered to be a red person. Now, in terms of behavior, red people are generally the people that are yelling at other people, and the other people might be like, oh, stop yelling at me, and they're passionate about what they're talking about. And it might come out as, well, let me tell you something. When you're talking about this and that is sort of a red response. Now, reds are also kind of like a shot glass, and I'm not promoting alcohol on this podcast here. I'm just trying to get in your head kind of like that small cup. So when a red gets angry, they kind of are like that size cup. So you'll pour water into it, and then it'll overflow really quickly. Or, you'll throw it, not the glass, but the water on a wall somewhere or something. And, it's just a little bit, but it's so powerful when it's like right there on the wall. And that's kind of a red with their anger. So they're really quick to anger. They're kind of like that hand on the trigger. Again, I'm not promoting guns here. I'm just saying that's kind of the metaphor for what I'm trying to get at. So these people are the kind of people that when you are going through your social media and you see, oh, well, John goes off on Jim Bob, or whatever, that's probably a red behavior. That's a red response, because they tell it like it is. They're very blunt, very stubborn. Well, you know what? I don't like you. There's no tact. There's no sugarcoating things. That's just the way it is, and if it hurts your feelings, it hurts your feelings. And you could probably be thinking in your head right now, wow, that sounds like a lot of Christianity right there. Yes and no. So this is just, again, an operational definition. So a red person presents like that, and other red people are like, yeah, that's, exactly, that's right, you tell them. There are some parts of Christianity that in some denominations that might present more like that. And that may not be for everybody. Now, it needs to be tempered with love. Always tempered with love. We'll go ahead and go on to the next one because I want to get these out pretty quick here in the beginning. The next one is yellow. So yellows are talkative, enthusiastic, persuasive, creative, optimistic, social, spontaneous, expressive, charming, full of vitality, self-centered, sensitive, adaptable, inspiring, needs attention. They're encouraging, communicative, flexible, open, sociable, imaginative, and easygoing. A yellow person is everybody's friend. Everything is fun. They're the people that have these experiences. They want to tell you about it. Sometimes they'll spill their guts to you. So a random person on the street, they'll just spill their guts to somebody that they've never met before, total stranger, like, oh man, the other day I had a flat tire, and I had to fix it and fill it up, and God was with me there, and this, that, and the other thing. So that could be a yellow response. Now, reds and yellows tend to go okay together. They're kind of the same. They can appreciate each other's kind of motivations and intentions and that kind of thing. But the thing that reds don't like about yellows is they talk a lot. So they can sometimes get off the rails. So sometimes reds kind of need to rein them in, or sometimes reds will stop paying attention to them. That's and they don't listen very well. They kind of give the appearance of listening, like, yep, that's great. And you could be saying something really off the wall, and sometimes they're not really listening like they should be, because they have too many irons in the fire. They have too many things going on. Maybe they have all these social things filled up in their calendar, especially when it comes to church or something like that. And so sometimes other things get neglected because they're trying to juggle so many things. And so that can kind of be a problem. And sometimes they focus a little bit too much on themselves, or they seem kind of self-centered. And that can get on people's nerves as well. Now, a green person is patient, relaxed, self-controlled, reliable, composed, loyal, modest, understanding, long-winded, stable, prudent, discreet, supportive, a good listener, helpful, producer, persistent, reluctant, thoughtful, conceals feelings, considerate, and kind. According to Thomas Erickson, these are about 80% of the population. So most of the people in the world are going to be green. Now, people can present as more than one color, but generally when I'm out in public, I'm trying to get a feel for what people's colors are so I can match their energy. Because if I can match their energy, I can gain instant rapport with them, and they can listen to what I got to say. So that was my whole purpose in kind of reading this book, is just trying to figure this stuff out. So a blue person is conscientious, systematic, distant, correct, conventional, seems insecure, objective, structured, analytical, perfectionist, needs time, reflecting, methodical, seeks facts, quality-oriented, scrutinizes, follows rules, logical, questioning, meticulous, reflecting, and reserved. So these people are kind of, that's blue. When I think of blue, I think of Mr. Spock's uniform on, the Star Trek original series from the 60s. Very logical, this is the way it is. These are the people that, can spend hours and hours doing, Bible study about, like, the smallest detail, like, how many chromosomes did Jesus have if he was born of a virgin? He must have had 23 chromosomes and stuff like that. And they get really down to nitty gritty. In terms of the case, I'm not really sure. I've not done a little research on that. Do your own research. But they kind of can spend so long on one thing, or they'll be like, all right, well, it's 70 weeks, between Pentecost and this event, in the Bible. And if you're not up on your P's and Q's, it can get really like, whoa, at the same time. And that's just as a church example. I mean, in life, these are the accountants. These are the people who like numbers. They spend all day in Excel, they make these giant spreadsheets, and they, have all this data, and they can tell you how many people are coming into your bake branch or whatever. Maybe if it's in a school, related thing, maybe it's how many kids pass the SOL test in the 8th grade or something. So these are the people that are very data. They like the data. And they're the ones that kind of just sit there and they're kind of like, well, we're going to consider all the angles. And sometimes this kind of makes them not move very fast, or they're just kind of sitting there thinking, and they don't seem to let a lot of stuff bother them. They seem kind of detached from everything. So that's kind of the way they are. In terms of like the anger factor, yellows are more kind of like a conventional glass, like you'd put water in or something. They can kind of tolerate more than a red can in terms of things going on that bother them, but it's still, going to make a mess. A green, in terms of what makes them angry, is like a giant water tank, and it just keeps filling and filling and filling and filling and filling, and it doesn't really stop. So these are the people that will hold on to things for years. Something that happened 5 years ago can still bother them, even though that person may or may not be in their group anymore. And blues, in terms of what makes them angry, is kind of like the same, like a water tank, but it's got a slow drip coming out of it. And so, you can keep putting water into it for forever, basically, and it'll just keep dripping out little by little by little by little. So really nothing really bothers them, because they kind of let it go out in little spurts in terms of what makes them upset. You can probably be thinking about people in your church right now, since we're applying this to a church organization, that are kind of like this. So your red person, your green person, your yellow person, your blue person. So all of these different people kind of work in conjunction. And you can say, well, can I have all the colors? Let's have just blues in our organization, or let's just have yellows. No, because everybody needs everybody else. Okay, so if you have a red together, a red and a blue will work together really well, because the red keeps charging forward and the blue puts on the brake and says, hey, no, we can't do a fundraiser this year with that part of our church organization because we don't have the money. So no, we can't do that. And then the blues will wait for the reds to have their little fit, because sometimes they'll kind of get angry and kind of just everybody's out to get them and just, Wah! And then the blues will be like, no, okay, now that that's over, now, obviously I wouldn't say that. All right, that's fine. I know you want to do that, but it's going to waste our time and our resources because we don't have the funds to be able to do that fundraiser this year for the homeless shelter. So that would be like putting a blue and a red together. And so the red can help the blue and the blue can help the red. And then the yellow and the green can be put together, because the yellow is kind of the one that can get off the rails sometimes, but the green kind of keeps them stable. Hey, why don't we do this color race where everybody gets tie-dye powder thrown on their shirts or something, and then we'll go and we'll do the bouncy house, and then we'll swim at the same time and do this. And then the greens are like, okay, well, how about we do that event next week, and then the next week or even the next month, maybe we can do that event. So that kind of stabilizes them. The matchups that don't really work well are going to be the reds and the greens, because the reds are going to be really passionate about stuff, and the greens are going to be thinking that the reds are angry at them all the time, where the reds probably are a little bit angry at them, but because the greens have a perpetual, I don't want to raise the bar, I don't want to rock the boat, they're going to constantly try to avoid the red person in your church organization because they don't want to rock the boat enough to change, because they just want to chill, they want to be stable, they want to relax. So they're kind of going to try to avoid each other, but they kind of do need each other. And the greens, like I said, make up like 80% of our population anyway, according to the book. They're pretty much going to go along with the flow. So pretty much whatever's happening, this is the way we've done it. This is the way we've done it for 50 years. This is the way we're going to continue to do it. We have all these new church members in our organization, but this is the way that the first founder of our church did it. We're going to basically die on this hill. And it's a kind of traditional, kind of the way things are. It's the way things have been. And the yellows want to change everything up sometimes. They want to like get more people in, do more things, reach out more. And the reds also kind of have that energy as well, but they're going to tell it like it is and just kind of charge ahead and stuff like that. And your blues are going to sit there and watch everybody and kind of keep track of the money flow, and they're going to look at those scriptures that kind of are obscure, that don't really have to do with salvation, like it's 1,260 days between Pentecost and the next festival where this event happened. So that's kind of going to be their focus. So they're going to be very focused on, all right, we got to make sure that we're teaching scripture, and we got to make sure that this is the way it's going to be. Sola scriptura, so scripture only. So why are we looking at this? Because that's not exactly in the Bible. It's not worded correctly. It's not the right way. That's not doctrinal beliefs. We need to stick to this because we've always stuck to that. Reds and yellows kind of can go together, and greens and blues can kind of go together. But it's important for everybody on the team to know kind of the directions. So for me, where I am, I know the colors of my co-workers, and I try to make up for where their blind spots are. So you may have a co-worker who forgets to turn off the lights because they left early, so I know that I got to do that and spot them for that. Or that somebody will throw out a great idea and you're like, well, we have these events going on, so maybe we should focus on these. So I think it's very important in an organization to know each other's blind spots. So getting away from colors for a minute, I think it's also important to share our testimonies with people. And it doesn't have to be, well, when I was born back in 1945, blah, blah, blah. No. For sharing your testimony with people, number one, it's going to bring you closer. Number two, it's a form of discipleship. And number three, it's going to help you know people better. And that's what we're after here, because we have to fellowship with each other. because we are followers of Christ. We're brothers and sisters. So brothers and sisters kind of have a knowledge of each other, sort of how things are in the house. And, the fix-it man is brother Johnny, and the go-to man to get things done is brother, Moore. And then the other person, is kind of the poster child for the whole getting the thing going. So that, that's Sister Linda or something. So knowing your resources is very important. But if you know a little bit about their testimony, that can help you too. Not only determination what their colors are, but you can kind of know them as a person. So, for instance, I might share with, I'm not saying share everything. No, not saying that at all. I think the best way to kind of know somebody is kind of ask them the question, or try to lead the question into, well, why are you the way you are? And may not come out exactly and say it that way, except for maybe for a red. But why are you the way you are? So if people can kind of understand the things in your life that have led you to being this way, maybe that can help them. For you, can help make a determination of what color they are. It can also help you in their blind spots. And maybe you guys can, maybe there's some unforgiveness. Maybe there's a father wound there, and that, and you get to know the person really well, and they're having trouble, and you can be like, hey, when you were sharing your testimony a couple weeks ago, your dad wasn't there, maybe, and this is after you get kind of close to them, maybe you want to pray about that, or, when they're ready, God will let you know. You pray about it, say, God, is this person ready to give this to you? Because if you go up there and they're not ready for it, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your breath. Because when people aren't ready, not only to be saved, but when people aren't ready to release things to God, no amount of persuasion is going to do it, no amount of talking is going to do it, no matter if anything is going to do it. Especially if they're presenting as green, because they're, of all of the colors, they are the most stubborn of the bunch. They will sit on a hill until they die. If it's, they'll just kind of ball up on you, won't do nothing. So that'd be like 100% green right there. Now, other people can present as other colors. So you can have somebody that is a red, blue person, and you have a person that may be a red, yellow person. I've seen that a lot, doing a lot of operating in this kind of way to think about things. So sometimes somebody is yellow, but they're actually red too. Or what's really great is when people are posing as the color they're not. So they're trying to be red, but then when you get to know them after a couple days, they actually aren't red. They're green, but they do have a little bit of red in them. So you got to be careful with that too. So that's why you really got to know the people that are in your church organization, because they can be gung-ho about some things, but then when you kind of get to know, you're like, oh, that's not your color. That's your posing color. These are just kind of some things that I've been thinking about, because this book is really great about the secular world and how things present and how to get things going. But what would happen if we applied these things to our witness, applied these things to our church and our ministry? So if you knew that somebody was red, you can tell them, all right, well, you know what? You're a sinner. And if you don't repent, it's not going to work out for you. And chances are, if you develop a good rapport with them, that actually might reach that person. But at the same time, if a person is red, who is like preaching in the street or something, or trying to witness to people, and they're presenting like that, and this and that, 80% of the population is green. So we need to remember that Paul says that when we give an account, we're supposed to do it with gentleness. So Paul is literally saying, hey, don't be red about your faith. Be a little bit more green. Or maybe even you could be a little yellow, a little bit easygoing about it, He was making tents. According to one of my mentors, it could have potentially been a prayer shawl. I think we talked about that during the prayer podcast. So he was a tent maker, but when you actually kind of do a little bit more research on it, he actually was making prayer shawls. He was making tallets. So literally he was making those to kind of keep him alive, keep him fed while he spread the gospel. So he was making a prayer closet to be able to teach people about God so they could pray to God. So that's kind of cool. Do your own research, though, on that. And then for me, I've watched a lot of videos of witnessing in the streets, and people will be like, oh, well, look at those demons back up, and blah, blah, blah. Yes, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but powers, principalities, and authorities. But let's pull it out of the evangelical type of mode of operation for a minute. Let's think about psychology here. Okay, so if you're like this, and it's to somebody who is blue or green or maybe even yellow, and you're like this, you are red, and you're this, and you're that, and okay, they're yellow, they're probably not listening to you. So maybe you're there and you're hanging out and you're just like, I love this sunset. It reminds me of God's love for me, man. You just kind of go on. You're like, yeah, that sunset, that red and that sky, reminds me of that blood of the Lamb, coming down off that cross, forgive me for my sins, because I've screwed up a whole bunch in my life. When I'm doing that, which one sounds better to you? And I'm not criticizing here. I'm just saying, like, read where you are, read your audience, read your evangelical organization here, or your church organization, wherever you fall on the spectrum of, the family of God. If I'm like this, you're kind of like, oh man, if you're red, you're like, oh man, he's mad about something. We need to minimize this and get out of the area because he's going to like do something, I don't know, something. And if you're just like, man, I tell you, that sunset, man, that makes me feel so good inside, man. Which one are you going to gravitate towards? Me, myself, depending on the mood I'm in, I'm probably going to gravitate more to the other one because I'm like, okay, well, why are you crying, buddy? What's going on? Why are you so overcome with emotion? And so, know your audience, know who you're around. When, I think it was Paul, when he was in Rome, he spoke like a Roman. When he was in Jerusalem, he spoke like he was from Jerusalem. And he kind of was a person of both worlds because he was a Jew and a Roman citizen. That kept him kind of out of trouble, as it were, even though he still got arrested and he still had the event where they were on the boat and then the boat got destroyed and he told the boys before, they went out, hey, we don't need to go out. God says it's going to be a bad storm. And like, yeah, whatever. Then he's like, well, yeah, God told me that, but okay. A red response would have been, hey, you know what? God said it. We're going to stay here. Even though I'm a prisoner, you're going to listen to me. And so which was more effective? That's just something to think about. And, if you're in your organization and somebody's arguing with you about doctrinal things, you got to be right. You got to be this, okay? That could be blue or red. Blue, this is what's wrong. The faucet is leaking in our church. This is going on. That's going on. And, this part of the Bible is not in the right place. It's supposed to be up here more. And so they kind of sit back and they kind of process and analyze that stuff. So chances are, if a church organization is getting off the rails, kind of like this podcast is, I'm sorry, I have a lot to say and a little time to say it, and I apologize. Thank you for sticking with me this far. If the church organization is getting off the rails and more things of the world are starting to creep into your church, chances are, because that to me, as I've thought about it, and I've thought about it a lot before this podcast, I think that that's a yellow response. Because the way that the yellows present, it's spontaneous, full of vitality, and they need attention, and they're very flexible. And if it's a completely yellow person in your organization, like maybe your pastor, stuff like that, a leader, youth leader, whatever, and they're completely in their yellow behavior, we need to kind of temper that with either green or blue. I would say probably green, and a person who presents as green-blue, because like that can get off the rails really quick. There's a movie that makes fun of mega churches. I can't think of its name right now. It was really off the wall. That to me would be kind of a yellow response, because we need attention, and we need to feed that flesh. So we're going to try to constantly be of the world here. So maybe put a bar in our church, or a Starbucks or a McDonald's or something like that. So we need to use discernment and wisdom. That would kind of be more of a blue response, I would say. You got to have one to have the other to kind of keep everybody going. In the Acts church, we had Gentiles and we had Jews. They were together. There wasn't, we're going to the Jewish Jesus church today, and now we're going to the apostolic church today, and we're going to learn about a different Jesus. No, they were all together, and then they had to have Paul kind of saying, all right, guys, I've heard this in the church, and I don't quite agree with this because according to this isn't right. So, once again, maybe they were more yellow in their behavior, and they were trying to, like, oh yeah, we like that money from those Roman taxes. Yeah, bring it on. Bring on the weird stuff. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we like that. We like feeling good. Oh yeah, thank you, Lord. Yeah. Bring more of that worldly stuff in this church. Oh yeah, that's great. And then Paul's like, no, guys, no. I'm going to be green. I'm going to sit here on this hill. I'm going to die on this hill. According to the word, it says this. And then, the blue response would be the specific scripture that we're talking about. In summary, one feeds the other, which feeds the other. So you need all these people in your organization. Otherwise, stuff's not going to really get done. In the book, it also talks about how he put all blues in a room, put all greens in the room, put all yellows in a room, and put all reds in the room. Gave them something to do. The thing he told them to do was not what he was testing. What he was testing was the responses. The reds were getting it done. They were competitive. They're like, all right, we're going to get this done. It's going to be done. And then he would go in there, and they had like 2 hours to do it, and they finished like in probably 45 minutes. When you go in there, they're getting ready to hit each other in the head, and you're just like, is everything okay? And you're like, oh yeah, we're about done here. And you're like, oh, okay. That's a red response. You could probably be thinking about somebody in your church right now that kind of has that response. And again, we're not judging here. We're not judging. We're trying to get this operational definition out into the Christian world here. So, and then the yellow response was, oh, well, we got to do this thing, but man, I'll tell you this funny story that happened to me the other day at Walmart. There was this guy, and he had this banana in his hand. He had a monkey suit on, and so they were in there for like 2 hours, and then they came out with something, but it was nothing of anything of what he'd asked them to do. It was a great story that they told, but it had nothing to do with their actual assignment. Then you had the greens that were in there, and they were very nervous, very worried. Nobody knew how to start. They didn't have all the directions, they thought, and they just were kind of nervous. They needed some encouragement to kind of get them going. And, then he had to kind of encourage them, be like, oh, well, let's look at this problem, this is what we're after type thing. And then when it was time for them to get it done, they kind of, well, you're presenting it. No, you're presenting it. No, you're presenting it. And then I think if I remember correctly in the book, it said that they ran off stage crying. And then you have your blue response, and they were going to get to the bottom of it. So they looked over the instructions, they read them again, they presented them in triplicate, they read it again, they said, oh crap, our time's about over, we need more time. Okay, now we're going to get to the bottom. Now we're going to do this. Who's going to make the spreadsheet? Okay, very good. Who's going to do the thing? Okay, very good. And, well, your time's up, but we need more time. We don't have enough time. We need to look over this. We need to, we're just to the first paragraph on the second page here. We need more time. It's been 3 hours. We'll need more time. Present what you have. And they didn't present either because they didn't have enough time. So I'm hoping that as I say this, you're thinking of maybe things in your church organization where people are kind of responded like this. So, it can be, if we had everybody as the same color in our church, it's probably not a good idea. Next week, we'll be back with part 2.